Mic check 1 2. It's the Y2K Collector, and I know a lot of you who watch the channel may, or maybe you didn't grow up in the era of the arcades, but around this time of year, back when I was a kid, school was getting ready to be over. You weren't concentrating on classes, and you knew it was going to be a summer of arcades. If you weren't at a water park, if you weren't at Six Flags, if you weren't at Dorney Park, if you weren't at Sesame Place, if you weren't at Busch Gardens, if you weren't at, I'm trying to think of all the ones. Did I say Hershey Park already? If you weren't at any of those places, or you weren't out camping, or you weren't at the movies, and it was just like a regular day, there were things that you did throughout the summer. You had like those summer off days, and you filled up your summer off days with the arcade store. And so there were games, the games that we loved to play the most were the fighting games, because those brought us the most adrenaline. They brought out the competitive nature between me and my friends. And I just kind of wanted to showcase a few games. I got about 10 to 15 games, maybe more, maybe less, of fighting games that are awesome arcade fighters that you can play on home-based consoles. Some of them, well, one of them is going to be handheld, and the rest are going to be for console. And I'm going to go through all of them, and all of these games, for the most part, are games that I grew up playing in the arcades. Now, I did a video yesterday on the PSP, and I didn't talk about Darkstalkers Chronicles. Now, there's a number of ways that you can play Darkstalkers. You can get Darkstalkers on the PS1. You can get it on the Sega Saturn. I had it on the Sega Saturn, and I actually sold my Sega Saturn copy. I do regret it, but I sold it in part because I did have it on the PSP, and I knew it wasn't going to be a game that I was going to play competitively, because the only role character that I would use in Darkstalkers was Felicia, because I knew how to use her the best from playing with her in Marvel vs. Capcom. But Darkstalkers is definitely a game that I saw in the arcade, and I tried my hand at it. I just wasn't ever really that good at Darkstalkers, I'll be honest with you. But it was a game that I played, and it's definitely one that you can try out on the PSP. PSP is probably the cheapest way to try this game, because I think if you try getting it like on the PlayStation or on the Sega Saturn, it's going to be like pretty expensive. But you could probably get a copy of Darkstalkers for between 25 and 30 bucks. And this gives you pretty much all the Darkstalkers. I think you get Darkstalkers 1, 2, and 3 on the PSP. So this is definitely one I would recommend you checking out. Pretty tight game there. So that gets the handheld out the way. Now let's move on to the big boys. All right, next up, Rival Schools. Now, man, if you grew up in the arcade, you grew up in the like late 90s, mid to late 90s, you know about Rival Schools. And this is one of the better tag team games. I remember around this time, like games that allowed you to pick more than one character at a time were becoming real popular, where you could tag in a different character and you could do like team combo attacks and things like that. And I think Rival Schools was just, there's a teacher, I can't remember what his name is, but he's the teacher. He has like the gray suit pants with the shirt and the tie. He was my favorite character. I can't remember his name right now. And I played this game a ton in the arcade. I played this, like, this is definitely indie rotation. Like if I was waiting for my next turn on Marvel vs. Capcom, I was definitely playing Rival Schools. Whoa, look at that. That's probably why it's all cracked up. But definitely spent time playing this one. This is an awesome 2D fighting game. The graphics aren't amazing, especially for it being on the PlayStation 2. But if you are able to get this game, I definitely recommend you checking it out. It is a 2-disc game, but Rival Schools is just sick. It's really just a sick game. I really don't know how, like, I'm gushing over the game right now. I've got to figure out where my disc 1 is. It's probably in my PlayStation. But this is definitely one of those games that you will want to check out. I was probably playing it recently. That's probably why it's not in there. But this is definitely a good one. Now, if you liked Rival Schools, because Rival Schools was awesome, and I remember like we played Rival Schools around the time we were playing Marvel vs. Capcom 1. But like right around the time Capcom 2 came out, you got the second installment to Rival Schools, only they changed the name and it was called Project Justice. Project Justice is a much more refined version of Rival Schools, and it is just as action packed. This is another one where you could, you know, do a little like tag team action in this game. A lot of cool moves, a lot of cool characters. My go-to characters were the girl with the volleyball. I can't remember any of their names because it's not coming to me right now. But the girl with the volleyball was one of my faves. I also used the teacher, and then of course one of the main characters, which is the more notable character, is the dude with the bat. I think that's Ryato or Ryuto or something. I can't remember. But Project Justice and Rival Schools are two arcade classics, and I highly recommend you check those two out. Those are two amazing arcade fighters. Next on the list, we've got Marvel vs. Capcom. I don't need to say a lot about this game at all. I have the Sega All-Stars version, of course, but this was the game that I played where I actually started learning air combos. I didn't know how to do air combos until Marvel vs. Capcom, and I learned how to do air combos actually with Spider-Man. I remember like right before Capcom 2 came out was when I learned how to do the infinite combo with Iron Man. It's like a glitch in the game where you could just trap someone in a combo and keep on doing it. But this is a staple, man. This takes me back so many memories with this game. This is a great arcade fighter. Definitely recommend you check that out. The greatest fighting game of all time. You all know this is my favorite. This might be my favorite video game of all time ever. I think this is. I think Marvel vs. Capcom 2 is my favorite video game of all time, probably. Like, I love this game that much. It's my favorite game. I played this game so much. I don't know if there's any other game that I put more time into than this game. Between just beating the game over and over and over again to unlock all the characters, taking it with me on the go with the VMU. I mean, I was addicted to this fighting, and like there's not many games, like I don't know how many people get addicted to a fighting game. I mean, I can see you being addicted to like an RPG or an action game, but a fighting game, nah. This is my favorite game ever. So many memories. Capcom 2 will always be the best fighting game to me of all time. It just always will be, in my opinion. Great game. Tons of characters. So many characters you could choose from both the Street Fighter and Darkstalkers universe, at the Captain Commando universe, Mega Man universe. There's so many characters you could choose from on both the Capcom side and the Marvel side. Think about characters like Cable, Omega Red, Magneto. I mean, just so many characters that you could choose from. Just an amazing game. And the reason why Capcom 2 is the best is because it was the last of the true 2D sprite-based fighting games. It was the last of that. By the time Capcom 3 came around, it had lost its like sprite-based feel, and it had taken more and more of like a 2.5D or 3D feel. And the air combos, like when you did them, they just didn't hit the same. It didn't feel the same. Like it was just like the way the combos packed a punch in this game was just like no other. Same thing with Capcom 1. I think they even hit harder. You feel the punches in Capcom 1, but Capcom 2 was just a perfect balance. Greatest game of all time. Another classic fighter. This was one that I saw in different arcades. So this game, I didn't see this at my local arcade, like the arcade closest to me, but there was one a little bit further away, and it had Street Fighter 3 Double Impact. I was never really too keen on like the Street Fighter 3 games, like Double Impact, and there's another one that I'll go through here. But the music and the feel of this game are super nostalgic, and it definitely takes me back to like junior high school days. So Double Impact is definitely one of the better ones to check out. Marvel Superheroes versus Street Fighter, another classic. So this is what I played right before getting into Capcom. So you'll notice a trend, like these games came out in order of succession, and right before Marvel vs. Capcom came out, this was the lead up to that. And again, you were able to pick two characters you were able to fight as. My usual combo was Ryu and Cyclops, and then sometimes I would change it up and use Omega Red, because I would try to learn some of the air combos. You could do air combos in this game as well, I believe, but again, they just didn't feel the same as Capcom 1 and Capcom 2. So, but still classic, like you can't deny that. And the music in that is just classic as well. The way the announcer is just so vibrant and exciting. Super cool game. arcade classic for sure. This is like the quiet sleeper that a lot of people don't talk about. Street Fighter Third Strike. Now, the die-hard Street Fighter players were nice at this game. Like, I knew dudes who were sick at this game, like very, very good. I never got to that level. I got so good in Capcom 2, I did enter tournaments in there, and I won like citywide tournaments in Capcom 2. I also won like tournaments in my school in Capcom 2. But that's as far as like my skills went. I never got into Third Strike. The best part about Third Strike to me is the art design. I love the way the characters are drawn in this game. They're all like real beefy, and I love how the colors are deep and rich. The colors they use, the sprite work is amazing in this game. I just wish I was better at it. And the music is super like throwback. It's so nostalgic, like really good music. Third Strike is a very good game that I was just never really good at, but really good game. Definitely one to try out and see if you can get into your collection. Here's one that I never really saw a ton of, Tech Romancer. I never really saw this one a lot in the arcades, but I did get it on the disc for the Dreamcast. And basically, I can kind of do this one at the same time that I do this one, because Tech Romancer, in my opinion, was like the 3D version of Cyberbots. Now, Cyberbots is like, I think this was only released overseas as an arcade like fighting game. You play like metal warriors, you know, like in your fighting, there's different moves that each player has. And this is where Jin comes from. This is the game that we find Jin in Capcom 2, the guy who's always like taking all his clothes off and rubbing a towel on his back. He comes from this game, Jin Hayama, I think that's how you say it. And then Tech Romancer, he's also in this one as well, I believe. Tech Romancer is basically like the 3D version of Cyberbots. Now, this game plays and sounds the best on the Saturn, but this game is also available as part of a compilation that came out for the Switch, Belt Action. I think Belt Action is the overseas version, but it's Capcom Classics. I don't know if that ever really got a release in the US. Somebody can let me know down in the comments. But if you know what I'm talking about, there's a combination of Capcom fighting games that released on the Switch, and it's called Belt Action. That's another way you can play this game if you don't want to get the Saturn version. But the Saturn version isn't that expensive at all. I think you can get it for like 20 or 30 bucks. Very cool game though. Definitely a cool fighting game. Neither of these I saw in the arcades. Maybe I saw Tech Romance, maybe. I can't remember. But these two are just cool ones to have for sure. And then last but not least, this is the game that really did start it all for me. Like, all jokes aside, I know I say like X-Men vs. Street Fighter, but before X-Men vs. Street Fighter, before Marvel Superheroes vs. Street Fighter, before Capcom and Capcom 2, before any of those games, you had X-Men Children of the Atom. Now, this is really where it all started, because I remember I used to play, don't laugh at me, but I used to play in a little band. I used to play trumpet. And I remember after band practice, there was a corner store that I used to go to buy Swiss rolls. And in that store, they had the arcade of X-Men Children of the Atom. And this is where I learned to use Psylocke, if I'm not mistaken. Psylocke is who I actually played with in this game. Yep, there she goes. Psylocke is the character that really kind of got me into like these fighting games. And this is really where it all started, man. X-Men Children of the Atom was like the birthplace of a lot of these like fighting games. And then once, like, I guess Acclaim, because again, this one was released by Acclaim, and I guess at some point they just turned it over to Capcom. Capcom took over, and then it became like Street Fighter versus, you know, and then that's when the whole X-Men versus Street Fighter, Marvel Superheroes, that whole thing kind of kicked off. But X-Men Children of the Atom is definitely top tier when it comes to those arcade fighting games, and definitely one that I would try to get. Obviously, these aren't all the fighting games that I have in my collection. I've got a bunch more, but these were just the ones that, if you're looking for that arcade fighting experience this summer, definitely check at least one of these out, because these are all great games, and not all of them are expensive. They all range in price. Some of them are really expensive, like Project Justice and Rival Schools. Those are probably going to be on the higher end. Tech Romancer as well. But you do have some more affordable ones like the Darkstalkers series. X-Men Children of the Atom isn't too bad, So definitely check some of these out. You may like some of the prices that you see, but that does it for me. I am the Y2K Collector. Hopefully you are excited for the summer that is upon us, and I'll catch you in the next video. Take it easy.